The information and views expressed by our host or guests on the Unlock Potential podcast are their own, and not a substitute for professional medical or fitness advice. Always consult with qualified healthcare or fitness professionals before starting any new exercise program or making changes to your current routine.
The goal is not the exact same output every single set. The goal is restrain yourself on your first expression. Fully recover. Express yourself a little bit more on the second set. Fully recover. Express a little more on the third set. Fully recover. Maybe a fourth, maybe a fifth. And that teaches us to feel anger and not overreact.
Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Unlock Potential. I'm Brian Delaney. Our focus this season is fitness. I'll be joined by Dr. Corey Duvall, who's going to guide us through his protocol for getting into your best shape so we can live our best lives and serve others well.
Hi, and welcome back to Season 2 of Unlock Potential. I'm Dr. Corey Duvall, and I'm taking you through this season where we describe my Stay Active method, a process by which we engage in exercise and recovery to make us the physically fittest we can be so that we're maximally helpful to others. I'm joined today by my co-host, Katie Rice, longtime friend, client, real estate guru in the local Asheville area, as well as a mindset coach for many others. Today, we're going to talk about how the physically improving aspects of ourselves can positively influence those around us.
Yeah.
And Katie, I'd like to start this by discussing the sauna and the cold plunge that we have here. And a lot of times when we hear of sauna and when we hear of cold plunge, it's about what's it do for us. Our longevity is better. Our risk of death is better. Our mood improves when we engage in these things. But what we do here for the Stay Active method is it's not just about what this does for us, but how it influences others. You were a part of the workshop when we went through the sauna and cold plunge. How was that discussion for you?
Oh, yeah, it was great because I might have been one of your skeptics, you know.
Ooh.
I've read all about the sauna and the cold plunge, and I've done it myself. And sometimes it's been great, and sometimes it affected me negatively. And I thought, is this just a fad? Is this just hype? So it was great to have the workshop and have you explain it more in detail when you talked about dosing.
Yeah.
That was helpful about what it does for us. But I did really love your explanation of when it works right for us, how that impacts other folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things I bring up in that workshop is that they have looked at surface skin temperatures for people when they are experiencing different emotions. And so when people are sad or angry, their skin temperature will change. And they've looked at that scientifically, and they'll see different temperatures on different parts of the body when they experience different emotions. And the two examples I use in that workshop are when somebody is hot-tempered and when somebody gives you the cold shoulder. And these are kind of two extreme examples of how other people's moods can influence their physiology. Now, if we keep an even presence about us, we can help take somebody who's super cold and allow them to warm a little bit. And we can take somebody who's super hot and we can help them cool a little bit. But we do that by regular exposure in the sauna and the cold plunge with the right meditative process. And so what I talk to people about there is they go into the sauna and they need to calm themselves by focusing on the comfort that's inside of them, meeting the discomfort that's outside them. And so there's this oppressive heat in the sauna. This temperature is uncomfortable as it starts to press into your skin. But on the inside, we are calm and comfortable. And I talk to people about exposing themselves to the right amount so that we can maintain that calm inside while still feeling the heat outside of us. And when we slow our breath, we cool ourselves. And so inside the sauna, we will focus on maintaining a little bit slower breath. And as we maintain a slower breath, we keep ourselves cool on the inside. Now, when that heat starts to work its way into us and the comfort that's inside of us starts to get uncomfortable, that's when we either have to drop down to a lower temperature or exit at that time. And I talk to people about that because if I approach somebody who's hot-tempered and I get heated too, things can explode over time. So somebody's going through a real heated moment and I approach them, but I allow myself to get heated as well, things burn up. However, if I can maintain coolness within myself and approach that person who's a little overheated, that person who's in an elevated state, and I can remain calm, I can influence their temperature as well into a cooling state.
So one of the things that comes to mind is rather than reacting, you're responding. Would that be right?
Yeah, very much so.
So you're in more control, right? A reaction, we tend to think of, I can't control it. It just comes out.
Yep.
But if I'm in control, then I'm responding differently. I get to choose that response. So is it just by keeping your energy, in this example, cool to affect the other person? Is that all you have to do? Is there anything else?
Well, if I don't have sauna exposure, I don't have practice meeting heat outside of me. And so if I see somebody who is overheated, I may just avoid them altogether because I don't like heat. Now I can't influence them because I don't approach them.
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't have that experience of meeting their heat with my own comfort and then knowing, oh, that's starting to work its way into me. I got to get away from this situation before I exaggerate things farther.
Oh, yeah. So getting to know thyself, know your limits, get comfortable with that, really know. And then when you're in the situation with others, you can show up better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the opposite of that, the cold plunge, we want to meet the cold of the water with our own warmth. It's warm and comfortable inside us before we get in the cold plunge. We want to meet that cold with our own warmth. Now, we can warm ourselves up and maintain our warmth by the opposite of what we do in the sauna. We can breathe quicker and create heat and warmth within us. And as we approach that cold, we stay warm. So if somebody's in a really low place, if somebody's turning away from us, if somebody is isolating themselves, giving us the cold shoulder, we've got to be able to approach them and maintain our own warmth. Otherwise, we end up getting frozen out of the whole situation.
Yeah, I love it. Really what comes to mind is sort of this dance that we're doing. You know, we're affecting them, but we're also affecting ourselves.
Yes.
Keeping ourselves where we need to be.
Exactly.
Yeah. Huh.
Now, for me personally, I am more drawn to heat, meaning I'm drawn to heat being outside of me, and I'm drawn to allowing myself to heat up as well. And so my practice in the sauna is a practice of maintaining my own inner comfort, because I can get to that place where the heat starts to work its way into me and I get like almost addicted to that feeling, like, oh yeah, I can do it. And so I'm warm, and the heat outside of me is warm, and I'm turning the temperature up, and I'm putting heat on the rocks in order to get the temperature up. And so my work is about staying cool when the heat is outside of me. But I'm almost avoidant of the cold.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of really intense cold exposures when I was young. And I've had some people in my life that were very cold as well, especially as I was young and growing up. And growing up in New York State and having some really bad cold exposures and having that interpersonal dynamic, I find myself very resistant to even getting in to the cold plunge. But I do get a positive benefit out of an approach in and back out. So I'll give you an example. I'd sit in the sauna with some buddies, and they'd be like ready to get out. And I'm like, oh, we're just getting started. And we'd all move over to the cold plunge, and I would get in, and it would be so painful, like searing pins and needles in my hands and arms. And I would just get in and get right back out. And those guys would get in the cold plunge for minutes. And I'm like, ooh, what is the difference here? And that's what I really started to notice was my upbringing, what I was avoidant of and what I thrived in, and then starting to kind of play with that balance over time. As I realized that, I was like, oh, I just got to suffer through the cold plunge. And so I breathe real fast, and I would just put up with all of that discomfort. And I got a couple of minutes as well. And the next day, 2 days, 3 days, my body felt so unsafe and uncomfortable. I had tension locked around my abdomen, locked around my pelvic floor. My arms were tense by my sides. And my own overexposure to the cold when I was young and growing up, and then forcing myself to do it then, was not a positive benefit for me.
Yeah.
And I found myself avoiding the cold plunge altogether. But we have to get to that place where we're ready to expose a little bit. I'm comfortable on the inside. I expose to the cold. Now I'm uncomfortable and I get out. Whether that's 10 seconds, 20 minutes, 10 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, we've got to be aware of that within us.
And is that why you recommend, hey, when you're starting out, just start with your hands and feet? You don't have to even do a full body immersion. And could you say the same thing about people that have the opposite, which is an aversion to heat, where they walk in the sauna or something like that, and they're like, oh, I can give this 10 seconds and then I'm out of here. Can they? Can they go in for 10 seconds and then maybe 20 and then maybe 30 and then maybe 2 minutes, et cetera? Yeah,
I love that question. I'll get to the first question first, and the second one after that. So if you watch any child naturally approach something that's a little too hot or a little too cold, they're going to dip a toe in or they're going to put a finger in. They're going to test it first before they expose the rest of themselves to it.
I see.
And I believe that there's a mechanism in our nervous system that this is okay to sacrifice and to feel in order to tell the rest of the body, yeah, we're good to go, or hey, we need to get out of this. And so we put a hand in or we put a foot in. And if that's uncomfortable, we go ahead and exit at that point.
That makes sense.
And if it's okay, then we go a little bit farther, we go a little bit farther. I will see people get their body into the cold plunge and have their hands and feet out of the water. And why do they do that? They always say they can stay longer. And they stay longer because their hands and feet are comfortable. And so the natural sensing mechanism is going to their brain saying, you're okay, but they're exposing themselves to even more cold than they should.
Okay.
So they stay longer.
Yeah.
Then they're like shaking and jittering and like not doing great for hours and hours after that.
Yeah. It's like they're bypassing the antennas.
Exactly.
Okay.
Here are the feelers. Well, the feelers are giving you mixed signals, and those mixed signals are not good for you.
Got it.
So we always say when we're getting in the cold plunge, hands and feet first, then go ahead and get the rest of you in if you're feeling more comfortable.
Yeah.
I find that the intensity of the cold gets people to that in and out phase faster if they have resistance to that. It's not usually a 10-second sort of situation in the sauna,
Right.
but yeah, definitely go in, focus on calming and slowing yourself. One of the main things I hear from people when they have heat avoidance is that they have trouble breathing.
Right.
And I think that they're just breathing so quickly on a regular basis, just subtle, quick quivers of breathing, keeping their core temperature up a little bit. They get into the sauna and the sauna lets them know, hey, you're breathing a lot. You've either got to cool yourself by slowing your breath or you got to get out of this situation. But it doesn't tend to be 10, 20 seconds. It's usually they get in and 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, they're like, that's all I can handle. And they go ahead and get out. But that 2 to 3 to 4 minutes, if they're focused on their own internal comfort, will help them approaching people in their lives that are overheated and not get overheated themselves.
Yeah. I love it. I think that it's been a great opportunity here at the gym to practice becoming more aware, being in the present moment, practicing the breath work, seeing what we like, seeing what we have an aversion to, playing with that a little bit. But having also the understanding that if we work on mastering that we can have a better impact or influence on someone else. Having that bigger vision and goal was really delightful for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it made it bigger than myself, right?
Yeah.
Anytime we add something like that to our lives, I think we move towards it more.
Yeah, I love
So,
that.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you had some overexposures or some resistance to sauna and cold plunge previously. What were some of those experiences that you went through?
I have undiagnosed Raynaud's, the autoimmune, where when I get too exposed to cold, here really, that my hands go blue and white, and then I can't warm up, and I can't warm up, and I can't warm up. It's very uncomfortable. So I have an aversion to cold, maybe like you, for different reasons.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Don't want to be cold. So practicing and playing with the exposure times, length of times, has really helped.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So it was a cold exposure resistance that you had some overexposure to?
Yeah. I get it all the time doing various activities.
Yeah.
So I almost don't want to add to it on purpose. Sometimes it just happens to me. Sometimes I feel like I can't control it, so that I come here and I'm thinking, oh man, I don't want to add to this. I don't want to make it worse.
Yep.
But what I'm learning from you is it could really help make it better.
It definitely can.
Okay.
So in the case of Raynaud's, when your body gets, I'll define this correctly, when your body gets overexposure to cold in the extremities, it goes through a sacrificial process. So in the short term, when you get exposed to cold, it sends blood down to warm it. But then as you start to get colder and colder, it starts to pull blood away so that you don't overcool yourself. And the pulling of the blood away is what creates the patchiness and the pain and the discomfort. And so it's an overexposure to cold. But let's use squatting, for example. If you have an overexposure to squatting and your knees start to hurt, and then you don't squat at all, any exposure to squats will make your knees hurt. So there's this ideal dosage, this Goldilocks zone of what's enough as opposed to what's too much. And so you want to expose yourself to the cold, but not overexpose yourself. And so when you're cold in a 68-degree room, and 68's the limit of what you can handle, your hands are going to be cold in just about every room you go into. But if you can expose yourself to 55-degree water, 45-degree water, 35-degree water, just in a flash, your body's going to go, oh, that got real cold. We got to send some blood down there and warm it up. And so it'll be less resistant to sending blood down through there at 68 degrees.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It practices. It gets the opportunity to say, okay, we can deliver. We can do this. Yeah.
She's not going to overexpose us.
We're not in a danger zone. Okay, I see.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
She'll touch the limit and she'll back away. It starts to trust you and it starts to send blood down on a more regular basis.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you're tired of feeling low on energy and settling for the scraps, it's time for your personal revolution. We are helping people go from the person that they have been to the person they were truly meant to be, and helping people get to the next level in their life, their business, and their relationships. Follow us.
So we have some good discussions in there in the past. And one of those that we thought we might talk about today is how strength work applies to the expression of our boundaries. Do you remember some of that discussion? Can you start us off there?
Well, something came up where I was like, I've noticed that sometimes in my life, depending on what's going on, when I do strength work, that I have an emotion come up. Like I just want to cry and I want to get it out. And then we were talking about anger and repressed anger.
Oh, yes.
And that's how you got into the analogy or the metaphor of doing strength work and being able to express that anger in a healthy way.
Yes. Yep. So when we are experiencing anger, we don't want to overreact to the situation. So typically anger is something has impeded its way upon us and we feel the need to push back in order to keep ourselves safe. So there's this energy of like, hey, don't encroach on me. I need to hold myself safe. And so we use anger when we're experiencing it to engage in strength work. Now, the way we write the strength work is progressive sets. So there's always multiple sets with full recovery in between each set. And the idea is not maximal on the first set and then try to hang on, try to hang on, try to hang on. The goal is not the exact same output every single set. The goal is restrain yourself on your first expression. Fully recover. Express yourself a little bit more on the second set. Fully recover. Express a little more on the third set. Fully recover. Maybe a fourth, maybe a fifth. And that teaches us to feel anger and not overreact.
Can you give an example of the story that you told? Like if you were walking down the street and someone, do you remember that story?
Oh,
I could try to get.
I don't. Do you remember?
I think you were mentioning it's like if you're walking down the street and someone's aggressive and they come towards you and they approach you in an aggressive way, your first response might be like, "Whoa."
Uh-huh.
And if they keep bothering you, then you're like, "Hey, man, no." You keep going, and then they keep bothering you, and then you might push them.
Uh-huh.
And if they keep bothering you, hey, you might get to the point where you're like, all right, now I have to engage in something more forceful.
Yeah.
But you didn't start off by just looking at someone and throwing the punch.
Yeah.
And so that was useful for me to see. Yeah.
So you're walking along and somebody bumps into you. You shouldn't just knock them out cold
Right.
on the first bump.
Yeah.
But when it goes, you've got to be able to feel that anger and be able to push back just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good one. I've often heard the phrase passive aggressive. And there was one day I was sitting, I was like, passive aggressive. Well, what's better than passive aggressive? What are we striving for to get away from passive aggressive? And I got this vision of a spectrum. Passive on one side, aggressive on the other side. I'd always heard passive aggressive together, and I got thinking about it as like the exact same thing, but it's not. It's two ends of a spectrum. So what is just inside in a healthy limit along that spectrum? It's patient and assertive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, hey, how do we define this? Well, patient means things are not going the way I want them to go, but I'll allow it to continue because it's not directly hurting me. And then assertive is things are not going the way that I want to go, so I'm going to make it happen, but not in a way that hurts somebody else. Well, passive becomes things are not going my way, and I'm letting it happen to the point where it's hurting me.
Yeah.
Well, how am I ultimately going to respond to that? I'm going to try to get things to go my way in a way that hurts somebody else. So we go from passive, I'm getting hurt, to aggressive, I'm going to hurt them. And generally, as things start happening to us, we're going to start to feel anger. And so it starts happening to us. Oh, this is kind of hurting. I'm getting some anger built up. What do I need to do? Not overreact all the way to aggressive. I've got to be to that assertive level. So I've got to be able to go from this is starting to hurt to assert a little more, assert a little more. And over time, we start to feel a little bit of anger as we get patient, but we don't let it go to the point where it really starts to hurt us. And we don't have to act immediately as things aren't happening the way we want to. But as soon as we start to get hurt by things not happening, we can assert ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, makes sense.
Any experience with that?
No, none at all. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's learning how to respond better, to listen, to honor, and then respond appropriately rather than being in reaction, you know? Yeah, for sure.
Katie, you're a mindset coach. Do you ever work with people who are going through grieving, sadness, or some depressive states?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is some advice you might give to somebody who's in a low place and reaching out?
Wow. And in a quick nutshell,
Yeah.
the first thing I always say is there's light on the other side. There's light on the other side.
Yeah.
Don't give up hope that there's light on the other side.
Yeah.
Reach out, even if you don't feel like it.
Yep.
And start something. Start today. Start anything. Start something.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work that has to be done in order to get out of the quicksand, as I call it. But there is a way out, and there's light on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So exercise plays a role in that as well.
Oh, big time.
Stamina work is what we take on when we're in a low place already. And what you said of there's light on the other side directly relates to the head and eye posture cue that we carry into that stamina work. Keep your head up with the eyes beyond the horizon. So as a mindset coach, somebody's on a low, dark, sad place, generally their head is down too. And they might say, Katie, I need some help. And you're letting them know that there's light over there. And their job is to try to raise themselves up to see it. But they're not there yet. And so the belief that we carry through that stamina work is trust our ability to arrive.
Which is why it's working within our comfort zone. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. When people are depressed and they say, I'm going to go join a gym and start a HIIT class, I say, let's back it off. Let's do something that's stamina building within your comfort zone, getting the gaze up so you can just start to come out of that quicksand, so to speak.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So somebody's in a low place, their head is down already. They've got to try to pick that head up. And if they try to run as fast as they can, as far as they can, they're not going to quite make it to the light. And they're going to get tired.
Yeah.
And when they get tired, they're going to want to quit. And so when people start to get a little bit of hope and do too much too quickly, they're just going to bury themselves again.
Yeah.
And that's why in stamina work, we try to help people understand that, hey, you're in a low place, but keep going. The light is there. You'll get there. You don't need to rush. Find the comfort zone. Keep moving.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a more gentle, one step at a time approach.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it does work.
Uh-huh. You ever had some of those dark moments when you're in the gym and had to go through some of that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. In the gym, on the bike, in life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why we keep building on it.
Yeah.
Layers. Gets better, gets easier to tap into.
It does,
Yeah.
You get that rhythm, that habit. Yeah.
Yeah, and a knowing, like when you do have an off day and you just say, okay, I know that if I show up again tomorrow,
Yeah.
it's likely to get better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you've gone through some of those phases, and
Big time.
you're better able to connect with people as they're going through some of those phases.
Yeah. Definitely.
And it's not about how many calories you burned. It's not about, oh, I beat my time from last time.
Right.
It's about, hey, I'm going through this tough place and I'm going to get through it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to reach a high point, and somebody else is going to go through their tough place, and you're going to be able to guide them through that process as well.
Right. Yeah. Isn't it fun?
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
The cycles of life, if we're lucky enough to live long enough, then we go through these cycles and we are able to give and receive in that way.
Check out the official Unlock Potential store, where inspiration meets style. Explore our exclusive collection of gear inspired by the transformational messages straight from our Unlock Potential podcast. From trendy apparel that embraces the power of positivity to accessories that fuel your motivation. We've got something for every go-getter. Spread the messages of empowerment, energy, and motivation that you get from the Unlock Potential podcast by grabbing your gear today.
Any parting words for our audience today?
You should definitely try out the Stay Active Clinic and the Stay Active method. And if you have had an aversion towards heat and cold, give it a shot. Be open to it.
Yeah.
Work your dosing, and then remember that there could be a bigger purpose, not just for yourself, but influencing others.
Yeah. So it's not just about our own personal physical fitness.
Yeah.
It's about how going through that process helps us to serve others over time.
Yeah.
I appreciate you all listening in today. Get into some sauna work. Pay attention to how you're feeling. Get into some cold plunge. Pay attention to how you're feeling. Take yourself through some highs and lows and be able to help guide other people once you've gone through it yourself. Be sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on Patreon for some deeper dives available as well. See y'all next week.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Unlock Potential. For exclusive content, make sure to subscribe to our Patreon. Follow us across all socials at @TheBrianDelaney and visit our website at thebriandelaney.com to shop our gear and see what's coming up next.